Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. We're doing today's Daf Nun Gimel and Kesubos 53. We start from the bottom, Nun Beis and with Beis. We're talking about, on Daf Nun Beis, we left off talking about Kesubos bin Dichrin, basically a right that the children of the woman have to her dowry and to her Kesuba, the Mono Masayim, their Masak, and all of that to pass to her children, as opposed to if the husband, she dies and the husband marries a second wife, her children get the sole inheritance of her dowry and her mono masayim in most cases. So the Gemara is going to discuss this a little more. Rav Papa Yasik the brave Be'aba Surah. Rav Papa was marrying his daughter off to the daughter of Abba Surah. They went to the house. It was customary, some places, they write the Kesuba before the marriage, before the actual wedding. Shama Yehuda Bar Merimar, Nafak Asai Schazile. Yehuda Bar Merimar was an important person, we'll see. He was a big chashuv, rabbi, the Gadol Ador maybe. Didn't go by rabbi, just Yehuda Bar Merimar. He was like Charlie Harari. Doesn't have the rabbinic title. He was an influencer. He's a media personality. Yehuda Bar Merimar, Nafak Asai Schazile. He appeared to him, to Rav Papa. Rav Papa was the big rabbi. He was the influencer. He was the mechazik. He was the mashpia. Kimat lepischa, when he got to his door, he accompanied him for the walk. He was an important person, but didn't want to go inside. Amar le neil marba hadai. He said, "Come in, let's go. I need your presence. I want him to write a big dowry to my son." He saw that Yehuda didn't want to go inside. Amar le, top from the Gilman Alf. Amar le, my datayich. Well, why not? Mishum. Amar le Shmuel Rav Yehuda Shinina. Shmuel the Rav Yehuda is Talmud Shinina, smart one, sharp one. Teve beburach santa. You shouldn't be part of a case where you don't go with the Yerusha of the Torah. You go from Yerusha, you alter the Yerusha of the Torah. I feel mibara bisha labara tava. Even if a parent were to write, they want their whole inheritance to go to the son who's good, and not to the son who's an evil child who went off the derech. You don't know who's going to come out of even the bad son. You should give equal inheritance to all of them, unless he's a bechor, then she gets an extra portion, right? Like Torah says. And certainly over here, where you can write a dowry, and we know this Kesubos being different, or basically the daughter inherits, right? The daughter inherits for her children. He says, don't worry about it. That's Takana the Rabbanan. You believe in the Rabbanan, you believe in their Takanas. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Yochai. It was said that Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Yochai, even from a Tana, Rabbi Yochai said, Amar Lei. So Yehuda said back, Hani Mili Midaite, Asui Enami. They only said that if he willingly, the father, gives a dowry with that in mind. By me being there, I'm going to force him to write a big dowry. I'm not telling him to go and try to persuade the father to write a big dowry. You just come in, accompany me there. Kamina, that's what I'm saying. He said, the facts are that if I go in, it's going to force him. I'm an important person. Charlie Harari walks into a room, you're going to write a big dowry. That's what's going to happen. Ben Seal Lang walks into a room, you're going to write a big dowry. That's what's going to happen. I think out of all the people in the Jewish world, I think Charlie Harari compares most to me, and I'll say it the other way around. He's not a rabbi. I'm not a rabbi. He speaks pretty fast. I used to speak pretty fast, but I'm working on speaking a little slower, more discernible what I'm saying. Smart guy. I'm a smart guy. He's knowledgeable about the world. He was a lawyer. Now I think he's just a speaker. I don't know what he does, but I was never a lawyer, but I'm an entertainer. I got a YouTube channel. Come on, I'm a professional dancer. One day I'll be a professional singer. One day I'll be a professional basketball player. If you check out my videos about exercising. So anyway, in terms of my presentation to the public, I'm not a rabbi, but I'm a scholarly, non-rabbi, not like your regular balabas who's not so scholarly. let's say someone like Eli Stefanski. Not saying he's just not a rabbi. He doesn't have the knowledge, rabbinical knowledge. I don't know if Charlie Hari does either, to be honest with you. I don't think he does. So I'm not like Charlie Hari. I'm like a rabbi who's not a rabbi. That's pretty darn good, right? Because I can joke around like not a rabbi, but I have the knowledge of a rabbi. Can't beat that, can you? All right. So I'm saying, come in, milai didai, hanimasi. He said that the mere fact that I'm sitting there is going to force him to write a big diary. Nonetheless, he was probably able to persuade him, Rav Papa, to come in. He came in, ishtik. He sat there silently, he didn't want to talk. V'yasib, and he sat down. Savar ahu mirtach rasach. Abasura, the father of the girl, he thought he was angry. Yehuda's angry at him. Yehuda Marmar. Kasve l'chomai dahavale. Before he said he was supposed to give away 1/10. The most he's supposed to give away is 1/10 in the dowry. He gave everything. His whole bank account he wanted to make sure this shidduch went through. And so if Amar le hashtanami lo mishtay mar chaye damar lo shviki midile navshai. Because even after he was done, he was still silent. He's like, wait a second, you're still silent. Even after I gave everything, he thought he was silent to persuade him to write a big dowry. You're still silent afterward. Look what you did to me. You made me give away all my thing. I don't have anything for myself. I'm like, even if it was from me, even the original dowry that you gave her, I wouldn't be happy with it, because every dowry Chazal instituted a Kesubos ben different, which he was against. I'm really hasha nami ahadarbi. He says, now that I see that you really weren't for it, let me go back. I'll retract what I said. I'm really shavi nafshe hadrana lo kamina. You have to keep by your word. I didn't make you into someone who's an Indian giver. You got to keep to your word. Right? She has the rights to her ksuba, which is generally the mother of Masayim. She decides she wants the money, right? She sells her ksuba to her husband, meaning what? Meaning, in the eventuality that she's eligible to collect her ksuba, either he dies or as a gerushin, he doesn't have to pay the ksuba, or his heirs would not have to pay her the ksuba. So that's what she's selling to him. Right? It's not exactly the whole value, because, like the one in the beginning of Makla says, it depends on the probabilities, right? There's 2/3 chance she gets it, right? Either the husband dies or there's a divorce. But in the one case where she would have died first, there would be no ksuba. She sells the ksuba at a discount to her husband. What about the dowry, right? Does dowry pass down to her children or not? Why are you asking about mocheres? She sells it. Let's say she just waives. She says, I don't want the ksuba. We saw Rabbi Huda says you should waive the ksuba. I'm like, hashta mocheres coming by the afagav the equal memer zuzi an sua da mina command the kamachula mea uchli v'uchla mocheres mi by. What are you telling me about mocheres? Right, mocheres. I had a suffix over there. There's a good side to say that she should maintain her ksubas being different. The mere reason is because she doesn't want to sell. She's forced to sell it because it's like someone's hitting her 100 times. She has financial burden to support whoever she's supporting. She has kids from another marriage, so she's under a lot of weight. So she sold her ksuba to support those other kids. When she's mocheles, right, where there's no reason, there's nothing forcing her to do it. Of course, all right, and she does it anyway. Of course, she gets rid of the ksubas ben different. I'm a rabbi. Pshitli mocheres tu asal acherim. He says the halacha is if she sells to somebody else, not to her husband, right? She retains ksuba ben different. The dowry goes to her children. My time was zuzi an sua. She's forced to sell. She wants money. If she waives her ksuva to her husband, you don't have to pay me. My time, she was mochel. She doesn't want it. The shaila is, which is not so clear, let's say she sells her ksuva to her husband, not to somebody else. Is it like she's selling a cherim dami? Or maybe because the fact she sold to her husband, it's like she's mochel. She figured, I'm going to sell it, at least I get some money for it. It's the same thing. She's doing it for the monetary reason. She's not waiving her ksuas being different. Mesa in Yorshin Shalzev and Yorshin Ksuvasa. This is a Mishnah towards the end of Masachet Tzivamos, right? If she goes ahead based on the testimony of one witness that her husband died, she goes and remarries, and then the husband reappears, right? So she has to leave her second husband, leave her first husband, and when she dies, both her Yorshin from the first husband and the second husband don't get the ksuba. We asked in the Gemara in Yivamos, there's no ksuba. The Gemara the Mishnah on a separate note said that she's penalized from getting ksuva from both husbands. I don't know if papa ksuva is different. Like Gemara trying to say that the Yorshin don't inherit the ksuva is different, the dowry. But my hachanami lema yetzer on. So why don't we say over there just like money forced her here? It was her yetzer hara forced her. She wanted to marry the second man, so she relied on a false witness. Hasam, the Gemara says Hasam knas hu de kansua rabbana. There, it's a different reason. It's a knas they instituted over there to make sure people would check into it before they got remarried. Yazir Rav and Bar Chanina Kamei Rav Chisla Yasuk Amr Mishmei Rav Elazar Malchelak Suasa Labaila Ein La Mizonos. Right? It says she waives her ksuva to her husband. She no longer is entitled to mizonos, to be fed. Meaning, after her husband dies, she no longer has to be fed by the Yorshin, her children, right? They have to not only feed her, give her mizonos, which was the third Tanai ksuva we had in the previous Mishnah. She's mochelas ksuva. She was mochelas mistama also on the mizonos. I'm really love the kamer the mishmei the guy rabba. If you didn't tell me this is the name of a great person, how many lach meishiv ratakas tova latamush rami beso? I would have said the opposite. Of course she gets mizonos, right? She did a great thing. She did a nice thing to her husband to make sure her husband didn't have to pay the ksuva to her. The Yorshin didn't pay the ksuva to her. The Yorshin should be happy. Let the ksuva to her. They did a good thing for you. You shouldn't do bad for them. Now give her mizonos. Yasser the nachman ula vivimi. They're all sitting. Rav Chia bar Ami came and sat by them. Who gavra the shchiva rusaso. His arusa died. They weren't fully married. They were engaged. Zil kvar ohavla ksuvasa. He told him you have to either bury her or give her the ksuba. Right. One of the conditions of the ksuba is that he gives her the ksuba. She gives him the ksuba. She gives him the dowry in exchange for that he has to bury her. So here, they weren't fully married yet. The ksuva didn't only kick in fully. There is a ksuva min ha'erusin, so therefore he has to bury her. Amalahu Rav Chia said, Hanina ishta arusa lo onin lo mitmala. If she's your wife, right, you're only engaged, right, and she dies, lo onin, right, you don't become an onin, she's not considered your married wife, lo mitmala, and you're not mitam, you're a kohen, you don't have the right to go bury her. And mitam, you're only for Zion Krovim, a kohen is allowed mitam, so he lo onin, he lo mitmala. Also, if he were to die out of Erusin, she is going to become an onain, and she doesn't have to bury him. She's not obligated to bury him. Mesa in a Yarsha. If she dies, he doesn't inherit her, even though a husband only inherits a wife. Out of Erusin, he doesn't inherit her. Mesu go back ksuvasa. If he dies, she collects her ksuba. Time with the Mesu. The reason is that he died. Ha Mesa he, all right, ain't la ksuva. There's no concept of a ksuva if she dies. My time. What's the reason? The whole presence of a ksuba is based on the wording of the ksuba. When you're able, not when you marry, when you're eligible to marry somebody else, either divorce or I die, you can get the ksuba. Right here, she died. So Kiyasa Rav and Amar Reish Lakish Arusa Shemesa in la ksuva. She doesn't have a ksuba, and she doesn't. Basically, it's the Gemara saying she doesn't have the rights to a burial. Amar Lu Abaye, or meaning her other the rest of her has to bury. Amar Abaye Zilu Amrile. Abaye said to them, Zilu Amrile, tell him, top of Nun Gilma Shkila Tivuseh Shali Achizri, take your goodness, your teaching, this wonderful teaching that you're taking, and throw it on the thorns. Part Tigmar Rav Oshaya L'Shmaise of Bavel. Rav Oshaya already interpreted this in Bavel. He already said this in Bavel. We don't need you to tell me. It's redundant. We know this already. But that's the halacha. The halacha is out of Erusin, she's not entitled to a burial. But not nukvan the havin lichim minai. The second thing in the Mishnah that the daughters get fed from his nechasim. Rav Tani ad zilach and leguvrin. Until when is she entitled to this? Right? She's entitled forever to get mizonos, the daughters. So from his estate. So Rav says only until they get married. Levi Tani ad tibagra, until they become bogeres, right? 12 years and 6 months. The Rav Avagav the Bogar, the Levi Avagav the Intimate. It sounds like Rav says even if she's a Bogeris, she would still get Mizonos until she gets married. And according to Levi, even if she gets married, she would still get Mizonos until the Bagros. V'lo Insiv. With the Insiv. El Bagar v'lo Insiv lo Bagar Chalyama lo Plig. The American concedes, no. Either one of these happens. She gets married or she becomes a Bulgaria. She doesn't get mizonos. Completely about Arusa. What's Machalos Rav and Levi? By an Arusa, where she gets engaged as a Nara, not as a Bulgaria. Low Bulgar, she's not a Bulgaria yet. V'chein Tani Levi Masisa Adati Bagran. V'yinte is Manehu and Insibun. Right? Levi taught in a brisa until she comes to Bogeres, and their time comes to get married. Tarte. What do you mean tarte? Getting married and Bogeres. Elav. Oti bag. What did Levi mean to say? Oti bag. All Bogeres. Ogim tismanei only it's nasava. Or they cut their time comes to get married, which is exactly what Levi said. Rav says, right? Ad tilach on the guvrin, right? Once they have an erison already, they're no longer entitled to mazonos. Levi says either they get married or become a Bogeres. Levi is more makel, right? Yeah, you can wait. They don't lose it until Bagras or Nisuin. Kitanai, the Machlokas Rav and Levi is the same Machlokas as the Tanaim. And Masay Abbas Nizonas. Until when is she fed from the estate of her father? Until she gets Eris, until she gets engaged. Mishum Lazar Amru Ajti Bagar, until Bagras. Tani Rav Yosef, Ad Havin. Rav Yosef taught in the Brayis, Ad Diahavin, until they are. What does that mean? Bayalus, the Mara asks, what did he mean? Havai the Erison, Havai Nisuin, Teku. We're not sure. Does she get it? It was just Erison. Once she gets engaged, this is a big question. Once she gets engaged, do her mazonos stop? Ibayilhu, Havaya there, we did that. Amar Lacha Rav Chisda Rav Yosef, Mishmil Lacha Minei Rav Yehuda, Arusa Yesh Mazonos or Ein Mazonos. Did you hear from Rav Yehuda? And Arusa, does she get mazona? She not get mazonos, which is basically what we've been talking about until now. We'll explain this Gemara like Rashi and Tosfos. That's a similar explanation. Even though the Gemara said take, we're not really sure. We're still trying to figure out the halacha, right? Does she get mazonos or not once she's in Arusa? Amalei Mishma Lo Shmil. I didn't hear anything about it. Al Misvar Leisla. Logically, I would say she doesn't get. Came on the Irsa Lo Nichale the Hitzel. She doesn't need to get it anymore at that point because once she's engaged, her fiance is not going to want her to be embarrassed, degraded, not have anything to eat. So he'll provide for it. Amalei Mishma Lo Shmil Lacha. If you didn't hear something directly, Misvara Isla, I would say the opposite. Logically, she does get. Came on the Lo Kimle Begava. Just merely because they're engaged, Lo Shadi Zuzubikti, he's not going to want to give away mazonos because he's not sure if she's actually going to follow through. Maybe she'll get cold feet and will end up marrying him. He's not ready to give her mazonos. Look at the Amri. Some say a different version of the story. Amr Le Mishmal Shmili. He said, I didn't hear anything directly. Misvara Isla. Logically, I would say she would get. Came in Lo Kimle Begava, Ad Lo Shadi Zuzubikti. The reason she gets from her father's estate, the husband is not, the fiance is not going to guarantee her because he doesn't want to throw away his money. Amr Le Mishmal Shmilach. He said back in the opposite. If you didn't hear it, clearly Misvar Leist, I would say logically she doesn't get. Came on the Ursula Nichale Tidzal, right? She doesn't need to get any more from the father's estate. He'll give her. He doesn't want her to be degraded. So therefore, she doesn't need to get any more. The husband, the Arus, is going to give her. Bomine Mirav Sheshas. They asked her, Menes Yesham Mazonas or Einlam Mazonas. Now, Menes, we discussed in Mesachas Yevamos, is a woman whose father died. She's young. Her mother, her brother married her off. Until she turns, of age, 12 years old, she can remain married. The guy, she could also, retract her marriage, and make it null and void, mikara, right? Annul it mikara, retroactively. It no longer exists if she wants to. Once she becomes bat mitzvah age and she's not menes, then it's like she accepted it. Maybe she has to be, the Gemara says in Yevamos discussion over there. So, if she actually waives the marriage, she annuls it retroactively, and she goes back to her father's house. Now, when she gets married to the guy, the husband's going to provide her for mazonos, but now she retroactively voided that marriage. Does she go back to her father's house and get mazonos as part of this takana d'Rabbanan that his daughters get fed until either Erisin, until they become a Bogeres? We learned that Almana bebeis avia. An Almana, meaning a widow in her father's house, meaning she was in Sa'arsa, she got engaged, and then her husband died before she got married. She goes back to her father's house. Grusha beis avia, or she's engaged and she got divorced from the engagement. She goes back to her father's house. Shomeres yavam beis avia. Similarly, a woman who's waiting for a yavam. She's married to a guy, and he dies, and she's waiting for the brother to do Yibam or Chalis. She goes back to her father's house. She has mazonos. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Oda Beisavi, Yeshem Mazonos, Enem Beisavi, Enem Mazonos. If she goes back to her father's house, she has mazonos. If not. Rabbi Yehuda, Hainu Tanakama, they're basically saying the same thing. Allah, Manazika Benayu. The practical difference between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda is this case of Manes. Tanakama Savar Isla, he holds a Manes also goes back. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Leisla. Rabbi Yehuda says no, he said a general rule to exclude the Manes. She would not get. Right? Let's say you have a Yavama, right? Her husband died. and now she goes and marries the Yavam, right? And she has a daughter from the Yavam, and then the Yavam dies, right? So Yesh la Mazonos or Ein la Mazonos, this daughter, is she entitled to get fed from the estate of, right? She has brothers also. By Yibum, right? The Ksuva, the second marriage, is really taking over the Ksuva of the first brother, Leisa, so it's based on his Ksuva. She's not entitled to it. Odilma came with the Leisla Mirishon. If he doesn't have it, the money for a Ksuva, Takin Rabbanan Misheni, they instituted the Rabbanan, we'll see later on in the Masechta, they instituted for the Yavama to get a Ksuva, to collect a Ksuva from the second husband. So therefore, technically, there is sort of a lien on this property. Isla Tekus, maybe she should collect from his estate, just like the daughters of a father should collect from his estate, the Mazonos, until either Erisin, until they become a Bulgaris. Teku, the Gemara, it's unresolved, this question. Look at the poskim to see what they have to say about this. Or wait till Shulchan Aruch Yoh, table and able, until we get to Even Ezer, and we'll discuss this in about 3 years from now. Hope to see you there. Stay tuned for Imad Ben Sion. We're going to talk more about this machlokas over here in Rav and Levi. Erisin. Is Erisin enough in order to stop this takana d'Rabbanan of the daughter getting fed from the property of her father? It seems to be that there's a different, that the Gemara in Baba Basra says the daughters always get fed from their father's property. Are the two halachas related or not? Two different halachas. I'm giving you a little teaser. Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion coming up next.